Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NODGE Spotlight on the MyFootballWriter YouTube channel. It's myself, Freddie Humphrey Wakefield, joined by Will Grant. And this week's Spotlight, what we're focusing on regarding Norwich City. Sorry to be a bit of negative Nancy's, but we're focusing on the 5 main causes for concern surrounding Norwich City, mainly on the pitch so far this season, rather than off it, as we don't know all too much about the goings on behind the scenes with Zoe Webber, but she's got a game that didn't even involve Norwich to worry about to decide. But before we get into it, Will, what's been going on with you? It's been a bloody long time since the pair of us both sat down and spoke about this football club that make or break our lives. But what's been going on outside of the football? What's been keeping you going?
Well, it's been quite hard actually, as Norwich do take up a lot of my thoughts and my weekends, if you will. But yeah, just constant working really. It's nothing really exciting to kind of get excited about from my perspective. It's very good also to have you back on the Nodge Spotlight series. I think Jack and Henry, sorry, have done really well in your absence, but it's always good to have one of your co-founders back of this little series we do. And yeah, in terms of the 5 things we're going to touch about today, I think after Mann's press conference he did obviously on Wednesday afternoon, I think maybe we could talk about 6 concerns now due to another injury list. But yeah, let's hope we get through the next few weeks pretty unscathed. But I don't think we're going to do that, are we, Freddie?
No, realistically, we're not. Just over a week for Norwich is they got to do a lot to get out of that. There's an away game against Stoke, which I did a match preview for in the last video on the channel. If anyone wants to go and check it out, so that's a game that is a cause for concern because they've won 4 matches of 6 this season. They're second in the league. Then we have to play West Brom at home, and we'll touch on Norwich at home in a moment because it's not great at all. West Brom have looked sharp so far this season. Then they go and play a team 40 miles down the road, down at their ground. So, yeah, we get to look forward to, well, I say look forward. I'm not really looking forward to it, but who knows? They've had a long unbeaten run against that team, so who knows what can happen. But anyway, we're not going to focus massively on those 3 games, especially that last one. That'll be something to focus on this time next week. But no, we'll begin really with Norwich at home, because it is atrocious. And this is a team who the last 2 seasons have been very good at home. They went a year unbeaten at home, and then out of nowhere, the home form has been atrocious. I believe it's 1 win in the last 8 or 9 at home now, and that was against already relegated Cardiff when their manager was Aaron Ramsey standing in. Our manager was Jack Wilshere standing in. I think Aaron Ramsey's actually back playing now. Don't know what Jack Wilshere is up to these days, but no. But yeah, we move on. We'll go to Norwich at home first. It's 4 games in all competitions, I believe. They have lost every single one of them. They've conceded 10 goals and they've scored 4. So they're basically averaging a 2-1 loss at home every single time they're at Carrow Road, which, Will, you're shaking your head because it's fair enough, because it is simply not good enough. The age-old saying goes, win your home games, draw your away games. Norwich seem to have a complete contrast of that in the mentality. They can't even draw a home game because they've lost every single one. It's a major concern because this is a team, as I said a moment ago, who have done very well at home over the last 2 years. And now they just don't seem like they know what to do in front of an expectant Carrow Road crowd.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And look, I'm so aware that obviously the sample size is still so small to obviously make drastic conclusions, if you will. But it has been really awful at home for a while, actually. And obviously, as you said there, that terrible run, but it's carried on into this season. And I think the issue which I've got with it is that I don't think you can make a case for Norwich actually like something to get a point out of any of those games either. I look back at the Millwall game. Okay, quite a tight game. I think we were decent in spells, but I think Millwall second half were a much better team, and I think their second half performance was much better than our first half performance. Then you go to the Middlesbrough game as well. Despite Manning saying we did some good stuff in that game, I thought that game was utterly bonkers in the sense that it was such an open game. The scoreline could easily have been maybe 4-0 Borough or like 3-3 or or even like mysteriously like they want to win for Norwich. But overall, that game, Norwich found it so hard to try and gain control of that match, and there was so much space for Borough to exploit, really. And I think that says a lot about Manning's kind of tactical approach, especially in that match there. And then obviously as well the Wrexham game, a game where I felt Wrexham deserved to win as well. Albeit maybe it was quite a tight game in the first half, but I think that first 50 minutes after the break from Norwich, that was probably on level with like a League Two team defensively wise. Just so open, and I think there was definitely some players in particular roles which they were quite uncomfortable fulfilling. Obviously, I think Cordoba's a great example in that case as well. So yeah, I think especially when, and the issue which I have with it as well is that fans are paying so much money to go watch these games. I mean, I think we're the second most expensive season ticket price in the league, really. And I think with that price, you actually expect some really good football for that value for money. But it's been totally the opposite as well. The entertainment has been drab. I never come out of Cairo this season yet. I've been excited by our style of play or how the game actually was. It felt like quite a bit of a slog to watch as well at times. And I think generally at home, I think our mindset really is just to try and get the ball into Sargent a lot and try to expect him to do something out of the ordinary. Obviously he has got that in his locker, but it feels like we need to create some more sustainable formulas really to try and get some wins at home. And it's getting quite a concern. And I think obviously the longer it goes on as well, it's just going to get worse and worse. And then you get the mental doubt start crawling in as well. So yeah, it's very concerning. But I think a question which I also want to pose to you, Freddie, regarding our home form is, do you think the mood and Manning's maybe start to the season might have been better if all of those wins actually came at home instead of away? What's your overall thoughts on that? As I think maybe there might actually be a better mood if that actually was the case, but it still feels, regardless, that it's been a poor start overall for Norwich in terms of performance wise.
No, it has been, given the volume of incomings and quality of players that were already at Norwich's disposal and from players they have brought in that look promising. No, it has been a poor start. I think I definitely agree with your point. I think the mood maybe would be higher if all wins were at home. I think as well, given Norwich's really lacklustre away form the last 2 years, I think people would have been a bit more expectant of that to occur rather than Norwich have completely flipped it now. They haven't lost away from home, which is bizarre given their truly horrific away record. I can't remember exactly the number. I want to say it's either 8 or 9 wins in 46 away matches before this season in the last 2, where Norwich every fan was very critical of the away form. So I think the mood definitely would be higher. I think it's nicer when you see your team win at home, I guess, albeit away wins can be fantastic because you travel such a long way. But when you're at home, it's always nice to win. As the age-old saying goes, as I mentioned a moment ago, win your home games, draw your away games. When you're at home, you expect to win, especially with Norwich being quite far away from a lot of places. Teams do have to do a fair bit of travelling to get there. But I think it definitely would have been better, I think, if wins had come at home rather than away from home. And again, as I'll mention again with how poor Norwich have been away the last 2 years, I think people wouldn't have minded maybe too much. Perhaps would have been very frustrated again at really poor away form, but maybe it could have been an expectation as such. But no, it's certainly, I think, would have been perhaps better off. But I'm someone who hasn't even been able to watch Norwich play a game at Carrow Road in person or even on television. I've not been able to see how they play, but I know a big point of yourself, Will, and everyone else is the big concerns about build-up play and sort of a lack of adaptability and willingness to change things during matches from Liam Manning, of course, Bristol City fans who perhaps tried to warn Norwich fans about this, of chirping up again and letting everyone know that maybe this was going to be the case. But I know that's a big concern of yours, and from what you sort of went on with after you spoke about the home form, and you think that that's quite a big thing regarding this Norwich team and with Manning, and he's got not earned criticism, but criticism has come on his head. We will talk about that later on. But I know a big thing of yours is the sort of weakness in build-up as such. You mentioned with Sargent, it's just trying to force the ball to him and hoping he can do something spectacular, which he has done on a few occasions this season. But I know you're very much frustrated by Norwich City's build-up play and that Liam Manning doesn't seem to adapt in game scenarios. I know that's very much something of which, when we've spoken sort of off a camera, especially against Wrexham, I know that's something that you really have a strong feeling toward.
Yeah, it really does annoy me actually, because what's in at Carrow Road is that Manning is trying to implement a style of play which is quite complex, in the sense that he wants certain players in certain roles of the pitch to try and get us into the best positions he can possible. But the issue is, it feels like what he's doing at Carrow Road especially is, it feels like he's completely ignoring like the essential areas of the pitch. And I think we can also read into that as well by the team selects. Obviously seeing Pele Matson and obviously Mirko Topic obviously played last weekend as well. And those midfielders probably aren't orientated towards a technical style of play. They're probably more maybe like born in midfield, a bit more physical in terms of their style of play. So immediately you kind of put in questionable personnel in quite an important build-up area of the pitch. But I think more so the style of play is to try and get us playing out wide and trying to be dynamic in that way. And then when you maybe focus in on our wide players, obviously Papa Diallo, a really, really encouraging start, actually. I thought he was really, really good in the games against Watford and Blackburn, and obviously Portsmouth as well in stages. But on the other side, you've also got Jack Stacey as well. Obviously, Stacey, as I said in a podcast last weekend, he's been a very, very good servant to the club. I think he has produced some really, really good performances at times. But in terms of attacking quality, he is limited. And if that is your main attacking threat in terms of wide, it is a bit of an issue and a concern as well. And then obviously Stacey's Stacey's kind of competitor in that role is obviously Callum Fisher, and he's more orientated towards a fullback role. So then again, you've kind of got two full like wing backs in that area of the pitch who probably aren't up to the standard of a playoff team, personally, in my opinion. But I think for me, obviously, we play in like a 3-2-5 build-up structure at home, and the issue I've got with it is in like obviously in the last few home games, it's been Cordoba, Darling, and Milic, which are kind of made up that back three in a defensive line, trying to play out from the back. But their ball progression has been quite slow. It's been quite unprogressive as well, and I think obviously that is down to obviously their maybe their confidence at times to play out from the back. But I think more so as well, I think there's a real lack of urgency and willingness from those midfield players to actually come deep and want to get on the ball. The amount of times I was at Carrow Road on Saturday and I just screamed for the ball to play forward, because there was definitely passing options on for Norwich to play vertically, but instead they play laterally side to side, and that isn't helpful trying to get fans on board, because that like seeing players play it side to side, it's boring, right? And when there's clear options to kind of see, literally, I've got a perfect view where I sit in the Upper Barclay, where like you can see passes from like a mile off, and if those channels aren't getting exploited, it's very frustrating to watch, really. So, look, I know see Pele Matson and Mirko Topic, like they aren't bad players, but I think especially in the last game against Wrexham, they had to do more to come deep to get on the ball, because Norwich looks so stale on the ball, and I think that's been a pattern throughout the season, which has been quite concerning. Obviously, we have seen as well Kenny McLean come deep into that like three back shape at the back as well. That's had some effect, but generally, I'm just not liking Manning's thought process of trying to eliminate central progression. I think it's really hindering us, and especially when you've got like your marquee players in like the attacking midfield roles, and like sort of Ante Cernak, it was also Kvisgaardsen as well. Those players cost quite a lot of money as well, and if you're not allowing them the chance to get on the ball regularly, then it feels like money's being wasted, because arguably, if you're not going to actually get the ball into those guys regularly, you're better off spending your money elsewhere on the pitch. So it's been really frustrating. And obviously, I think as well, there's definitely really been a willingness to try and play longer and direct into the channels more to try and get Sargent into the game. And I think that, and purely as well, I think that's had to happen, because if there's been no short passing quality from deep, you have to go long and try and challenge the opposition defenders that way, because Sargent is such a good player to this level. So I just think Norwich need to show a bit more bravery, and try to play through the thirds more centrally more often, because I definitely think there's definitely potential for us to grow in that area, because I think obviously Pelly Matson did show some really nice movements and ability to get forward as well during the last game against Wrexham as well. I still feel Jacob Wright is being underused as well. I know he did have a match ban obviously for his red card, but I was absolutely baffled he was on the pitch against Wrexham. I really was, especially as well seeing Liam Gibbs getting played before him as well. So that was also a concern. I definitely do think Norwich do have the personnel to get on the ball and play more centrally, but it just feels like that's being totally negated right now. And actually, they're actually going to have to start playing through the middle of the pitch, because look at your wide options, Gaviscart and Diallo. They're now all injured as well. So Norwich have actually got to show some bravery in the ball and try and play through those thirds centrally.
Well, going on to your point there about trying to play centrally and get it through the middle areas of the pitch, how much do you think the departure of Marcelino Nunes and almost the, not really lack, but the just, well, they knew he didn't want to be here because it was made clear at the start of the season. Do you think with his departure and not really getting a direct replacement in terms of his play style, of course, Pelle Matson was the replacement, but he's not the same type of player. He's not as attacking minded as Nunes was. How much do you think that sale really has, well, in your own words there, how has that negated Norwich's play through the centre of the pitch? How much do you think that departure has impacted that?
Yeah, I saw my best mate who actually goes to the football with actually tweet about Nunes's obviously omission from the Wrexham game. Obviously, him now going to the other side of the region, obviously, is why that's happened. But yeah, it really is ironic. I think the issue is, I think Manning came into Norwich with an idea to try and improve it physically and try to get some real box midfielders in those two number 8 roles. I think that has been a successful ploy at times, especially away from home. I think it allows us to kind of compete more for longer as well, which is really promising. But it's been a real issue, I think, for the last 18 months about Norwich, and I think we obviously will maybe touch on it a little bit as well, or maybe now, is that I think probably even since the JHT era actually begun, I think we've missed Gabriel Sara so much in a sense that he was so good at getting on the ball in deep areas, playing in the half turn, and then being able to connect the play into the strikers. But ever since he's gone, the quality in midfield areas has been so poor. And I think what's happened is that's led to the likes of Sargent, obviously Kavisgarten and Cernach especially, have been so isolated in those attacking areas of the pitch, because the actual progression into them has been so poor and inconsistent. And that is probably why I'm so frustrated by it as well, because I know Nunes actually has that quality to maybe help us, definitely. And it's just one of them, isn't it, mate, where hindsight is such a powerful thing, really. And I definitely do think his influence would have definitely helped us, especially in deep areas, because I think that is majorly important. But at the same time, Napa and the owners were the ones to Batman in and try and get another physically oriented midfielder into the building. So they obviously see it differently to what we do. I personally think Norwich do have a lot of quality in the central areas of the pitch, and I think arguably they probably do have more central quality than actual wide quality right now as well. So I've been a bit surprised just overall, as I said earlier, about just the complete elimination of trying to play through the third century. And I do think Nunes probably would have been a real handy tool for Man in this season, especially. But yeah, it's one of them as well. But also, to be fair to Norwich as well, I think Nunes' performances, I think probably since the new year, obviously up to his departure, they were also quite poor. And I also think as well at times he was a culprit for our poor build-up play last season away from home in particular as well. So it's one of them, mate. I think definitely he would have helped us out now, but I don't think he would have completely changed the fortunes of this side of midfield for sure.
No, who knows? It may have done, may have not. But as you say, hindsight is truly a wonderful thing, and we won't know. That's the thing, unless something truly bizarre happens and he decides to switch back. It's the most unlikely of things, but No, we won't know. This is the thing, we won't know. But what we do know is there's a lot of fan discontent, as you mentioned earlier when you were talking about sort of the build up and what you've seen and how you've been frustrated when going to games, and a lot of other fans have been frustrated. There's been, I'm sure everyone has seen Canary call clips rather from as of late, and there are a lot of people already calling for Liam Manning's head. Of course, it is still ridiculously early in the season. We've played 6 championship matches. There is 40 games to go. But in football, there are people who become very impatient. It is a truly just gruesome sport in that way of when expectations, when they're not met, then people really do, they don't like it. You know, we've been promised really, last season it was said at the start of the season the aim was playoffs, and then it wasn't for a little bit, and then it was again, and then Torup found out that it was, but he wasn't achieving, but he didn't know that was the case. It wasn't maybe what he was told. Manning and Napa made it very clear that is the target this time around, and they're falling short of the target early on. But if you're going to do it at any stage, why not do it early on and pick up points as you go on throughout the league season? But a fair few people already are not very happy. They're not happy with the style of play, and as you mentioned, with build-up play and very little lack of adaptability, with which Norwich were promised a head coach. In all fairness, the words of Ben Napa were they had got a coach who was adaptable, and Manning himself had said he will be adaptable, he will change things during games, and perhaps people haven't seen it and they've not been happy with it. But no, I think there's a lot of discontent here. People are getting bored quickly. And even you said when you're watching a team knock it side to side like that for 90 minutes and not getting results, you naturally get frustrated. But a lot of people already want a change, which perhaps is unfair. But when you're promised a lot of good things and you don't get them, you naturally are frustrated. But no, I think maybe it's a little bit overboard given how early on we are into the season and given the major injury list. I mean, said it in the Stoke preview, it's getting silly now, that this injury crisis we have every year. But that's another thing to talk about on a different day, and the thoughts of how that happens and why it happens. But no, a lot of people they're not happy, and some of them want a swap of manager already.
Yeah, and of course it's too early, as you said, and realistically it is too early. But I think what fans are seeing is they're seeing a team right now that aren't good at scoring or creating goals, and also seeing a team which also leaks goals as well. And I'm sure we're going to touch on about our defensive woes probably after this particular topic. But yeah, it's rightly so, to be fair. I think when fans ultimately, as I said earlier, they pay so much money, and I think it was £37 for an adult to watch that game on Saturday, which is an interesting sum of money to watch the end outcome anyway. But yeah, I think at a club like Norwich, it feels like, especially when Norwich play at home, it feels like a lot of fans go to get entertained, and I think that's always been one of our major USPs of this football club, and why Norwich is always such a likeable club externally as well, just due to our style of play and us liking to be very, very proactive on the ball, taking risks, etc. But when you actually consider what Man is trying to do this season, a lot of it seems to be about trying to contain the opposition, being a bit more pragmatic at times. And I just don't think due to Norwich's recent success in the Championship, we're so unused to seeing Norwich play pragmatically at home, because that isn't how we've actually been accustomed to watch our team the last 5-10 years. We wanted to see a team who's very proactive on the ball, wants to create openings, and when fans don't see that, then of course they're going to question the end product on display. And although as well, I think I've seen a lot of fans as well saying that they don't actually care about the style of play unless we win games. But the issue is, mate, if we're not winning games and the style of play is really, really bad, then the style of play then seems to get exaggerated a lot by the fan base. And if they're seeing no style of play to get excited about, then it's really, really hard to try and make excuses like in favour of Manning, because if they're seeing nothing on a pitch to get behind, then what else are they supposed to go off? And it already feels like the game in 9 days' time, the East Anglian derby. It feels so huge for Manning, and I guarantee he probably hasn't felt pressure like this at any other club beforehand. Maybe at times at Bristol City, I think he had a few poor runs, but it just feels like the next 3 games are really, really important for Liam Manning and trying to get some trust back into the club really and the fan base. And obviously, I'm actually a firm believer. I feel like if you had Liam Manning last year, for example, and we started this project a year ago, and he was allowed that time to build, and players were getting used to his style of play, then I don't think fans would have been so hasty on him immediately. But just due to the failures of last season and Napper's man beforehand in JHT going so wrong, they're expecting results. And to be fair, what Napper and the owners have come out and said during pre-season and during the start of the season, they're put foundations and quotes down that they want to see this team in the top 6. And if that isn't feeling likely or close at any stage of the season, then you're bound to get booed, you're bound to get criticised. And I think that's where we are right now. We're not seeing a team who can't score goals, and we're seeing a team as well who can't defend very well. And in total, that makes for quite a poor football team. And that is where we are right now at the minute. And it feels like, it just feels like I just can't think of a Norwich side that was consistent. It just feels like an absolute decade ago, either due to injuries happening or just due to poor form and players giving up at times. It's just like a combination of factors, mate. And I totally feel the fans' frustrated because the fan base have ultimately been told to expect a playoff race or charge this season, and that looks so far off right now. So they're bound to boo, they're bound to criticise. So it's tough, mate. It really is. But where are you with it at the minute? Are you still firmly in the camp of these games is way too early to kind of judge it off these games, or do you feel like the next 3 games could actually be really, really important for Manning and maybe his future so early, or do you have a different thought in truth?
Well, I'm a person who believes every game in football, regardless of who you play, is massive. You can't go into any game and think you're either going to get beat or you're going to cruise it, because that's the wrong mentality. You don't go into a game believing that you're either it's going to go one way or another. You have to go into every single match truly just going for it like it means absolutely everything. You can't go into games and think that that your maybe your managerial career is already on the line, or that you're cruising along in your job, because anything can happen in any given game. You can't just have a mentality that is defeatist, or not elitist is probably the wrong word for it, but a sort of a more positive approach to a match, because you believe you're just going to win because you're simply better. That's not how football works. That's how you end up getting beat, by just becoming complacent. So no, every game is huge. Yeah, I do believe that it is early. I've said it somewhat myself before I asked you the question. I think it is very early. It's 6 matches. There is 40 more games to go. This is a long old season. Yes, we've played a month and a bit into it, and we haven't been the best. That there is no denying that. We've been bang average, and Norwich have been bang average, unfortunately, for 18 months. They well, even longer than that. They've been bang average since they were relegated. In all honesty, they've been bang average for 3 years, and that is unfortunately the fact of it. Even when they were in the playoffs, they really shouldn't have got in there. In all honesty, they shouldn't have done. They had torrid runs, and they were lucky that other teams dropped points when they also did. They shouldn't have got there, really, but that's in the past. And going into the present, they have been expected more, and with the team and manager they had, really, could you blame anyone, given a different manager who people had seen last season with arguably a worse team had a lot of success? But this is the thing. Bristol City's team is completely different in terms of personnel and players in the right positions. And Liam Manning maybe is trying to replicate what he had there, but it's very difficult when you don't have the exact same players. You don't know how that is going to work. But yes, I do think it is very early to maybe criticise a new manager in his new job. I thought the same with Johannesov tore up. I felt that the entire season. Because we were told, well, he's got a 3-year plan. This was it, 3-year plan, and they ditched it after one because he didn't reach the target of what was expected, which is perhaps cutthroat. But football is a very cutthroat sport. As for the next 3 games, do I think they're big for him? Of course. Every game is big for him because he's already under a fair bit of pressure from fan criticism. So every game is going to feel big when people already start questioning someone, because if it keeps going poorly, that is then easy for people who are already criticizing someone to just jump on their back. They can keep saying, oh, it's not improving, it's getting worse, no signs of anything getting better. And then the easy thing to say or do is get rid of the individual, because that's just how football works. You get rid of the main individual, you get someone else in, then they give it a crack. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But no, the next 3 games are huge, regardless of who the Norwich manager or where they were in the league, or in the league where they would have been. Stoke City have 4 wins from 6 and look sharp, and they've got a very good manager in Mark Robins. That case, you just have to look what he did with Coventry. He's a good manager. And then you look at West Brom, another very good team, a team who have been in the playoff positions for years on end. I think they've reached the playoffs in they've been at least in the top 6 every championship season since 2018-19, and one of them they ended up promoted in 2nd place. So that they're a very good and solid outfit in this division. And then, of course, you move on to those lot, regardless of where they are in the league or their position in the footballing pyramid. Norwich could be 5 leagues above them, and it's still, or they could be 5 leagues above Norwich. Doesn't matter. It is the biggest game in your calendar on paper straight away. Doesn't matter where you are in the league. That is your biggest game. Any Norwich manager in that position would feel nervous, because it doesn't help. You have a 16-year unbeaten run looming over your head, and you don't want to be the individual to lose that game. And when our manager has been involved in that club and has played for that club, there's then a whole other narrative you can take if he's the man that loses Norwich's winning record. You can already see what reactions will be from those lot of fans, and maybe even from Norwich fans. Again, that would be an excuse to maybe jump on his back and force a narrative that maybe isn't necessarily true. But no, these next 3 games, as I've just said, to put a long answer short, no matter where Norwich are in the league or their opposition are, they're huge. And yes, 6 games in is too early to criticise a new manager, because as I've said, and I'll sound like a broken record, you have another 40 to go. No one knows what's going to happen in those 40 games. No one can genuinely say, oh, we will win this number of games, we'll draw this number, we'll lose this number, and then be spot on. It's not how football works. But no, that's what I think. Yeah, it is too early, and these next 3 games, they're massive. As I said, it doesn't matter where you are in the league. You're playing for the same 3 points every single game. Every game is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just feels like the pressure is only going to intensify if results obviously don't come our way and in favour of us. But I think it's also as time, it isn't a Norwich season without Norwich being a bit lacklustre defensively. But I think the issue actually is now, Freddie, is that we're perceived to now got a more pragmatic coach into the building, and we're still equally maybe as poor defensively. If you look at the stats say we are the 2nd worst team in terms of conceded XG this season. I don't know what you guys or the audience actually thinks of XG, but for me personally, I think it's very helpful in actually understanding where the team are actually at defensively. And the issue which I actually did bring up in the most recent podcast as well, so obviously feel free to go and watch that. Please after this if you endeavour to. But I think the issue I'm finding with us defensively right now is that we're having to do so much like last gasp defending and box defending like very, very frequently for long periods during games. And I think what that actually shows you is that you've actually got quite a weak structure defensively in the first place. And I think that has been the case during parts of this season. Look, I think Norwich have looked sturdy at times and have been very, very good at blocking progression centrally. And they have been very, very astute as well in terms of one-on-ones and especially set pieces as well, which is a very, very nice thing to say as well. But it just feels like, Freddie, I don't know what you've seen, and also in terms as well of the goals we conceded, but I think back to the games against, obviously, Coventry was obviously a error-inflicted goal by Harry Darling, which was actually unfortunate because I actually thought that game he was very, very good. But the fact remains, mate, as well, like I think obviously Medic as well. I think obviously barring the Coventry game, sorry. I think he's looked quite poor in terms of one-on-one defence, and he looks quite weak in terms of speed as well. So that's also an issue as well. But I just think generally, if I'm seeing a pattern emerging where we're actually conceding a lot of goals due to mistakes at times, and then we're actually conceding goals just due to the volume of space that we're actually conceding as well, then I start to get really, really fearful. And then you add into the mix as well, man is almost, I'd say reluctance to try and change things when there's obviously errors and kind of issues structurally. That's an issue, right? Because if you're not going to change that and be proactive at doing so, it then leads to serious consequences. And an example of that was Wrexham at home when Cordoba had to cover so much space. He hasn't got the most pace as it is, and he just looks so completely out of his depth on those occasions as well. And it just feels like, mate, we seem to be conceding goals just due to structural deficiencies and actually mistakes as well, and us being inferior as well in terms of one-on-one battles, in terms of recovery speed as well. And if you add all of those things together, I think a team which prepares on Norwich in the week starts to get a lot of ideas about our real problems. And I just think, I don't know what it is. It just feels like, considering there was so much noise made and effort put into pre-season in terms of getting us really, really good and robust defensively, like, should we be seeing more output in that regard? It just feels like we're still just as bad at defending. I know maybe at times we're better during periods and some games, but the fact remains, like, just consistently, we're still as weak as last year at defending.
No, it's concerning because, of course, there were a lot of defenders brought in. That's what doesn't help. But no, it is weird. It's a hard one to call because, of course, a manager can only do so much of telling his players where to be and where to cover and what to do in scenarios, and it's then completely down to the player to do it on the pitch. And of course, with the injuries Norwich have had, they've had to pretty much shoehorn players in at left back as of late. Of course, against Coventry, I think that was the game, or it might have even been Wrexham as well. Norwich were getting crucified down both flanks because in the way in which they try to play, as you mentioned, the wing backs are effectively attackers, so they're just getting killed in transitional periods. Where then when they're playing three at the back, the left back or right back has to come in and be a centre half effectively, and then you then leave so much room on that side. You have to wait on the other fullback to get back. There's a lot of individual things in terms of tactics which maybe lead to it, but as well, I think with the centre halves, it's weird because Harry Darling looks brilliant because he's a very good player at this level and he is perfect for the modern day style of play. Jose Cordoba, I mean, in my viewpoint, I don't think I've seen a defender be renowned for ball playing and look absolutely petrified when he's got the ball at his feet. He genuinely, I can always think of Millwall away last season, and any time he got the ball, he didn't have a clue what to do. He looked absolutely just terrified of the ball when he had it at his feet, which you shouldn't be when that is your role in a team. And then Jakov Medic, of course, he's in his prime years of his career, I believe 25 or 26, but it takes time to adapt to a very fast-paced and physical and quite brutal league, the Championship. When you first come into it, it can be very hard. We saw that last season because nearly everyone we brought in were youngsters from obscure leagues, pretty much. And that takes time. It takes time to adapt to a new division and a new country, of course, for any player, if you're not in and around it and you don't know it. So that doesn't perhaps help with the centre halves. The five at the back formation, I'm glad that it's not being used anymore because Norwich were getting killed by it, absolutely killed by it whenever they had to make changes. Obviously I was at Watford and Portsmouth, but I mainly cast my mind back to Watford and when the swaps were made at wing backs, and then I think we ended up with Liam Gibbs and Jeffrey Schlupp as wing backs somehow, and they were just being killed. They weren't getting back quickly enough in transitional periods. And as you mentioned, Norwich only really have Jack Stacey as a right back. At left back, Papa Diallo was being used there because he can give you everything going forward, but he didn't do all much going back because he's not a defensive player. Norwich don't even have him available now for 4 months because of a quad injury. But no, there's a lot of different factors that you can put into it in terms of maybe we haven't got the right personnel and we should have looked a bit further in the summer. Maybe should have brought in a few more depth players. But again, with hindsight, anyone can say that. And as well with systems, ultimately it is down to players to do what they are told. And some do it better than others and do it well in one game. They may do it really poorly in the next. That's not down to me or you or a fan to really decide because we don't control that sort of thing. But no, defensively, yes, it's been shambolic. To have an XG against of nearly 13. I think we've actually conceded 12 in the league as well. So we're effectively conceding when we're meant to be, which when actually you consider the amount of quality saves and performances Vladan Kovacevic has had, it's quite sublime. It says it all. Wrexham, we lose 3-2. He's man of the match. You've conceded 3 goals. Your goalkeeper is man of the match. That's all you need. That's all you need to know about this team defensively. It says a lot.
Yeah, and I think obviously we've brought up there 5 points really where like we've all touched upon, and I really want to ask you, Freddie, in terms of obviously we mentioned about our home form, like our weak build-up structure, like Manning's kind of willingness to not adapt in certain periods as well. Obviously, our defensive play as well, and fan unrest. Kind of, if you had to pick one of those topics which like you think drastically needs to improve ASAP and is the highest priority, what would you choose? I think personally for me, I think although there's quite a lot of topics there which are quite vague and it might overlap at times as well, I think if I was to be abstract and say one thing which I definitely want to see change, then I think it's our home form. I really do. I think although our away fans are brilliant, and obviously being in the away ends, they are so good at creating atmospheres. Every 1 to 2 weeks as well. Like that's great, fantastic. But ultimately, at the end of the day, your main crowd are those 20,000 Norwich fans at home plus every week. And if they're not getting entertained and not seeing results for value for money as well, then those fans will start to go. I know we've got such a great fan base, and you can only take that for granted. I know you can't, but it just feels like that home form has got to change to try and get some trust and faith back into Manning. I think hopefully it's just one scrappy win or like one fortuitous game when Norwich can just try and accelerate. But for me, I just think that home form is just so important to hopefully get back on the right track. But equally, we've definitely got to improve at trying to score goals and defend better. So what do you see, Freddie?
No, it's home form. It completely is. It's embarrassing ultimately to have played 4 home games and lose every single one of them. That's not good enough. That is genuinely, if you're losing every game at home, it's relegation form. You cannot afford to not win at home because that is where you have got all your fans backing you. As you've just said, 20,000 plus people are there to support that team. That there's only at most maybe 3,000 away fans who can make as much noise as they want, but you are being backed by people who care about you more than anyone else in that entire stadium, apart from maybe your family when you're a player, because those 20,000 people would give anything in life to be in the position you are. But yeah, that's what has to improve. If it doesn't, God knows, and only God can help them, because it's shocking to not win at home is truly shocking, because that is where you're expected to win. Literally, you look at betting odds. Home teams always usually have a better odd of winning because they are at home. They're being backed by home fans. They're in their most familiar place. But No, but it's easy for me to say, but those individuals in the dugout and on the pitch need to be the ones who change that. And if they don't, something is going to change, and it's not going to be pretty, that's for certain. But what do you as viewers think? Do you think it's the home form? Do you think it's the lack of adaptability? Is it the poor defensive work, the poor attacking work? Or is it even just, do fans need to be a bit less angry with the individuals at this football club? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'll try and reply to any of them and any concerns people have. But that's all from me and Will for today. It's goodbye for now. We'll see you for the next video of ours here on the YouTube.